Welcome back in another crazy tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to learn about how the new input system working in the VR, and also we are going to learn a one more advanced stuff that how we can basically give input in our UI like how we did in left mouse. Like suppose I have this UI and if I press the left mouse it's basically work. So how we can do the same thing with in our VR. Okay, so you're also going to learn that. So before do that we need to first learn how the new inputs enhance input system working for the VR component or our VR game. Okay, so for discovering that you can go to your content folder, then you can go to your VR template. At the VR template you find a folder called input. So double click and here you find first of all the context. The context is basically the structure of your inputs, that how your inputs will be behave, or whatever your inputs, what is the basically behave and what's there's any modification or not. So this context it's basically declare or decide this stuff. And then for give our custom inputs we can create a inputs. For example, if I press right mouse and here you find in the input section you find the player mappable input config. So at here you can basically configure your inputs that how you basically want. Okay, so in my case I'm just create a simple default. Then I go to my IMC default the in context, because this default context using in the VR. So if you go at here, oh let me just unhide this stuff, and in the event begin play if you scroll right side and here you find that by default it's set in enhance that the inputs that default as MC default context. So that's why we are using this one. So inside of that what I did simply add action map, and I just select my super action like this. You can search your super action or whatever you create, and then now we can basically key map that what which button if you press that it should be work. For example, I said that for the value index RD trigger the right trigger, then Oculus touch R trigger XL, then VV R trigger X, and mixed reality R L trigger. Oh, you can use this as a, for example, mixed reality the R1, so R trigger XL. So you'll use this one. So save. So what will we do, this is a dynamic input. So for any of that, for the quest, for mixed reality, it will be work with our right trigger. Okay, now because we have these inputs, these super inputs, we can, I call that a, for now we already learned that how basically inputs is working in the VR. Okay, so you can, even if you have your own context, like if you create custom you can select from here, but make sure you need to write these lines of code that player controller enhance inputs, then add mapping context. Okay, and once you do that, now whatever inputs are basically your action, your input action you create, you can search that. For example, because I create the super heat and here is my super heat event, you can just simply search your super heat or whatever you create and you find something like this. So now you need to basically understand some new logics at here, because by default if I show you like will be something use some in Unreal 4 or even 5 we use something called action mapping, and that is pretty easy. Okay, it's pretty have similar like this, but it doesn't have the trigger start and you know the other action. So what is the basically trigger? The trigger is basically it will give you an output, are you pressing or that your trigger or not in a tick section, like it will be just continuously give you update. This start is kind of like the on pressed, like how we do that on clicked or not. If we press, then whatever I'm doing, I just get my widget interaction. So whatever you find for add, you can search here. By default Unreal Engine provide you the motion control aim, so you need to also add one more component called widget interaction. Okay, from this part we are going to basically focusing on how you can basically make the input system for our UI. Okay, and at here the on widget interaction I just grab that, and from that I said that press point key with left mouse, so it will be behave like left mouse, that yep we press a left mouse on that UI, and the complete is basically give you output like release. Okay, So from that, what I did, that release point key as a left mouse, because we pressed event, so we even released that trigger, so that's why. And as a result we found something like this. Okay, now we can move on to our UI. So for the UI, create a simple UI with it 1280 by 720, and I add some tags so I can display. I add a press button so I can show that yep, it's press. And in the graph I just add a simple code that int equal, if whatever my value is, it will be plus with that, or add. Once is add, it will be set that value in my that specific variable, and from that I just convert that text integer to text, and then I set that text into my text box. Okay, that is a simple mechanism. But make sure in the VR the inputs as inputs, like how we work on the PC or mobile with a click, in VR the click never work. You need to use the press and release, and even you can, if you want, you can use the hover and unhover. It's total depends on you. Okay, so it's mean that in VR you can't use that on click button. It will be never work for you. You need to use the on press button. Okay, so that's what I used, that on pressed. Okay, now let's move around to our 3D, because we want to display in VR. There's a two way to display your UIs and other stuff whatever you create. In most popular and most easiest way to display your UI, and most of game use that, is 3D UI. For example, like this, what I create, as you can see, this is a 3D UI or the widget what I create. Okay, it's looking simple, and even I can drag and drop anywhere. Even I can add this actor in my player with, I can attach with my left hand and it will be work also. So there's a no issue. Now let's move around to our 3D widgets, how I create. So simply you can go to however you want and simply right mouse and simply click on blueprint and actor class. Inside of your actor class, what you need to do, you need to add on the widget section. You can go to widgets and you can need to search simple that widget, and you find that widget. At the widget we need to just simply make sure the draw size is pretty similar whatever you create on your UI, so it will be never become big or small. And at the draw size you need to put the value 1720. Then the draw time you need to put value to 0.1, and others you can leave like default. You even don't need to press the receive hardware inputs, it's don't need. But make sure in the UI classes you need to select your UI, otherwise it will be never display. Once it's done, you can now drag and drop your UI and your world. Even you can, if you want that you need to use that UI in your with your hand, you can simply grab that and simply just drag and drop it to the left hand or right hand. It will be work also from there, so there's a no issue. Okay, and that is basically the pretty similar or all the mechanisms for the VR inputs or VR widgets and other stuff. Okay, and next video we are going to update our project in a more like for architecture visualize and for other stuff. Okay, and we will also learn that environment creating for our VR development. So that's all in this video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Love you all. Bye bye. See you in the next tutorial video.